Because I can't carry one of those.
Recording is in progress.
We're going to do a recording here.
I'll mute you until we get to you. So this is Andrew Williams Jr. I'm with the Andrew Networks. You can find us everywhere at andrewnetworks.com. But today we're having a special broadcast for the Native American Heritage Day. Today is November 24th of 2023. We have several special guests, including Mr. Martin Harris, and Mary Jane, along with Mr. Herschel Daniels Jr. So on the screen, you'll see that the Census Bureau recognizes Native American Heritage Day. And this is from the American Presidential Project Proclamation 10667, National Native American Heritage Month 2023. During National Native American Heritage Month, we recognize the invaluable contributions of Native peoples that have shaped our country and honor the hundreds of tribal nations who continue exercising their inherent sovereignty as vital members of the overlapping system of governments in the United States. We also recommit to supporting tribal sovereignty, upholding the federal government's solemn trust and treaty responsibility, and working in partnership with tribal to advance prosperity, dignity, and safety for all Native people. Since time immemorial, Native communities have passed down rich cultures, knowledge, traditions, and ways of life. But throughout our people's cultures, identities, and governments were not always seen as a part of the nation, but as a threat to it. Native people were pressured to assimilate, banned from practicing their traditions and sacred ways, and forced from their homes and ancestral homelands. This violence and devastation cost countless lives, tore families apart, and caused lasting damage to tribal communities and institutions. Despite centuries of violence and oppression, Native peoples remain resilient and proud. Today, Native Americans are essential to the fabric of the United States. They serve in the United States Armed Forces at higher rates than any other ethnic group. They continue to steward so many of our great lands. Their contributions to science, humanities, arts, public service, and more have brought prosperity. Their diverse cultures and communities continue to thrive and lead us all forward. Now, before I allow Herschel Daniels to take the stage, I will say that today at 11:30 a.m., the Black Miners Bar Urban Open House, the Native Americans Natural Flora and Fauna Lake Natoma Waterfront District. So for well over several thousands of years, California Native Americans lived along today's Lake Natoma District. Join us as we continue the journey to acknowledge authentic California history through the California Gold Rush and the impact upon California Native Americans. In 1844, the Honorable Andrew Dorff Jr. obtained title to Rio de los Americanos, over 35,000 acres along today's American River Parkway. The grant uniquely documented the desire not to disturb the Native American population. Leaders Dorff's ranch, cattle, and agriculture production was at the northwest of this vast property. These Mi'kmaq nations seasonally utilized the bountiful pristine river natural flora and fauna as agriculturalists, hunters, gatherers, fishing as mound builders in harmony with the land. They have a very sustainable way of life that remains valued and worthy of preservation. In 1848, gold was discovered along today's American River and the historic town of New Bar, Sacramento, California, in today's Sacramento County. That gold was vast Negro. Margot, excuse me, I have to mute you. Margot, Marmon Island and Negro Bar Gold Mining District. Today, we reclaim and restore the transition years of 1840 through 1875, while honoring the indigenous nations who lived from time immemorial upon this land. California pioneers of Pan-African ancestry have a long and cherished relationship with extended family. I owe to all my relations. In conclusion, in 1914, Red Fox James, a Blackfoot Indian, sought endorsement from 24 states, riding horseback along the way to support a national day recognizing and honoring Native Americans. He presented those endorsements to the White House the following year and began the long and ongoing journey towards U.S. government recognition and preservation of national Native American heritage and culture. In 1986, the 99th Congress passed a joint resolution authorizing the president to proclaim November 23rd through 30th, 1986, as American Indian Week. President Ronald Reagan declared the first Indian Week that year and each year following his presidency. President George H.W. Bush continued the proclamations until 1990, when he approved a joint resolution to declare November as National American Indian Heritage Month. This tradition has continued annually. In 2008, the Native American Heritage Day Act was enacted by Congress and signed by President George W. Bush on October 8, 2008. 2023 National Native American Heritage Day continues as we help restore and reclaim the natural fauna and flora and fauna between Folsom Dam and Nevis Dam, today's Lake Natoma. Herschel Daniels Jr., thank you so much for joining us. Please unmute yourself, and if you'd like to share your screen, let me know. Otherwise, Herschel Daniels, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Andrew. I bring greetings from not only Friends of the African Union, but from the National Alliance for Black Business and a co-founder of the BIPOCA History Alliance Project, the World Conference of Mayors. Now, this is a project that defines history for the past 400 years based on House Resolution 1242, the 400 Years of African American History Commission Act. That is American law, like today, signed into law by Congress and signed by the President January 8th, 2018. Like the National Native American Heritage Day today, Congress passed it by voice vote. That means everybody voted for it, whether independents, Republicans, or Democrats. Nobody raised an objection. What we're doing today is including in that 400-year history initiative is the history of 400 years from 1619 to 2019 of the indigenous people here in the United States of America. In the majority of land, that is a history of just those indigenous people. But as pointed out in California, that there were Spanish who had been in California since the early 1500s. So in terms of that history and bringing it forward, today is a unique day in kicking off around the work that the Biden-Harris administration created on day one around Executive Order 13985. Because the whole idea of advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government is an important aspect of the treaties that we have violated as a country with indigenous people since the beginning. And that this administration from day one said that it would address this issue for Black folk, for Latinos, for Native Americans. and it has done so, but we have not picked up on that as it has secured billions of dollars in direct new investments for tribal nations and Native Americans. We have not picked up on it between people of African descent and Native Americans, and built on the legacies from the World Conference of Mayors Committee on Indigenous Peoples Issues, that in Tulsa, Oklahoma, on a commemoration of the massacre there in 2021, that the Cherokee and tribe de-established the idea of freedmen, within the tribe, and said everybody is a member of the Cherokee tribe, no matter how they became history in the Cherokee tribe, that they were Cherokee. And that history in this day is being made in California. That brings together that history between people of African descent, people of indigenous descent who lost their lands to form the United States, and the colonizers who made it happen. We're in 2023. It's time that we come together, Black folk, indigenous people, people of color, and allied white folk, all together. And that's what the BIPOC Alliance for History is all about. Thank you, Andrew, for this time. Thank you, Michael Harris, for this time. I yield.
All right, Michael Harris, thank you so much. The floor is now yours, as is the screen. So now's the time for you to introduce yourself and tell us why we're here, and share the information with the world. Thank you, Michael. Only if you unmute yourself can we hear you.
Okay, so we're sharing with the world this blessed day of National Native American Heritage Day. And so I introduced myself. My name is Michael Harris. I was born here in Sacramento County, and my mother is from Choctaw County, Alabama, right next to Mississippi. The headquarters of the Choctaw Nation in Alabama is maybe 20 miles away, Pushmataha, where my grandmother was born, and my great-grandmother was born not too far from there in Alabama. Prior to it being a state, it was a very strong hold of the indigenous communities, initially colonized by the Spanish down at the mouth. But the idea that our family has, on my matrilineal side, deep roots in Alabama. On my father's side, in Louisiana, the Ouachita Nation, which of mound builders, the mounds rival the pyramids in Egypt in their construction. The base of the pyramid is wider than the pyramid in Egypt. 80 pyramids throughout the Mississippi Valley. So the indigenous blood flows in my veins. Again, I was born here in Sacramento, California, not too far from the confluence of the American River at the McClellan Air Force Base. So today, where we are is upstream from where I was born. Dos Rios is what we call the confluence. We're on the American River. From time immemorial, the Native American tribes here, the Miwok, the Nisenan, and the Madu, lived here, migrating, seasonally using the water of what we call the American River as a basis for their wonderful way to sustain the land. Salmon are running right now. I mean, it's just a beautiful place. We'll take a look at it later. And today, well, last week, no, about 2 weeks ago, the state parks have announced that the boat launch is being named Polo U. And I'll find out what that means in Miwok, or maybe Nisana. What that means is very significant that the Red Hawk Casino, the tribal elders that have custody of that casino have weighed in on what we're doing here. And they just, are mindful that this has been preserved for people of African descent, and they're wanting the boat launch. And that's significant because the water feature along the American River, which is now Lake Natoma, is very populated with people because it's a very beautiful place, and we'll have pictures of that. But the idea that the indigenous cultures where we are have been decimated through disease, through genocide, through just not, wanting to fully embrace the American culture. They have their own indigenous culture, as we have our own African culture. And it shouldn't be a way to form a more perfect union where you have to capitulate and be something that you're not. It causes serious mental illness. So I'll leave that alone. But Red Fox James, and that is, I hope, Andrew, you'll be able to pull up his picture. He's very prominent. Red Fox James, in 1914, a Blackfoot Indian, lived at the near the Canadian-American border. And, most of us recognize that many tribal nations, they didn't have like a city. They were migratory peoples for the most part. They had their permanent settlements, but they, were custodians of the land, and they followed the hunting trails. They followed the natural ebb and flow of the agricultural seasons. So the idea that Red Fox James rode on horseback to 24 states on horseback to engage the powers that be, to take a look at indigenous culture. And this is in 1914. And in 1915, after going through all of those states on horseback, he rode to Washington, D.C. and made his case. And that's where the day that we're celebrating today, that's the origins of a positive, forming a more perfect union requires
You go ahead, Michael. I'm just scrolling this for the audience. Oh, you froze, Michael.
Okay, so
well kept on one side, and the other side was dealing with genocide. So the idea today is we're making a new way forward. And the best way to really have a good conversation with somebody, particularly that you might not get along with, is to have some food. Because you're going to find something on the table that you might like, and you could serve it and eat, and you have a good meal. Like most of us celebrated Thanksgiving yesterday, and if you didn't eat too much, you were full and you were relaxed and you sat and listened. If you ate too much, you got the itis and you went to sleep. But the idea is here. We have about 5 acres in what we call Black Miners Bar. Historically, this area was called Negro Bar State Park. The town Negro Bar was across the water, 175 years. And my sister here, Mary Jane, do you mind if I show your face?
No, I don't care.
She said, I don't care. So, Mary Jane, can you see yourself?
No.
Okay, down in the corner.
Oh, there I am.
Okay.
Hello.
Talk about your work with the California native plants and being a master gardener.
Well, the California Native Plant Society is at Soilborn Farm, and we are developing an interest in California native plants because our insect populations have declined over 50%, and they feed the birds and the fish and the frogs, and so everything collapses without insects. So I'm helping I go to the farm every Wednesday and help them. It's a fabulous organization. They've done a lot with very little and a lot of volunteers. And then I'm a Sacramento County Master Gardener, and I work with them. I've been a Master Gardener since I think 2016 or 2015. And we have a garden at Fair Oaks Horticultural Center where we teach people how to take care of plants, how to take care of water, how to irrigate, how to prune, how to find native plants, how to put in a water efficient landscape. And we teach classes, and it's on the web under the Sacramento County Master Gardeners webpage. So there's a lot of interesting, fun things to do. They get you outside, and it immediately improves your disposition. Bring your kids outside too. And your immune system. There's a lot of benefit to it. So I love it. And I'm happy to be working here.
So you see we have down that road there, roughly 5 acres from what you see is our playground. And this has been in the general plan here at formerly known as Negro Bar State Park. Now it's Black Miners Bar. They're still figuring out what they're going to call it. But the idea, where'd it go? I'm looking for the keys. You see keys over there? Yeah. So this is the shed that we're in. This was done. We're putting a new roof on it. It weathered the storms, and they didn't think it was going to weather the storm. So, I mean, it's a priority for them. I said, okay, fine. And the idea that, let's see, can you see this? This was the old residence house for the park ranger. Back in the day, see, this area here was created by building Folsom Dam and Nimbus Dam. And the after bay, we call it Lake Natoma today, but it's to control the water for flood control in the capital of the great state of California, because this is snow melt. And some years there's quite a bit of rain, and it will flood. And so, there's another key. All right, so this one they got another door on here. What's going on? Okay. Anyway, I don't know if you can see in here. This is the office that we're gonna have here to do these classes for environmental justice, for Native American cultures, African culture. It is still called Black Miners Bar today. It was Negro Bar. So most of us understand that when you say Negro, the question is what is going on? But it was a whole town: Negro Bar, Negro Hill, Negro Village, Negro Bluff. This area in 1844 was owned by the African founding father of California. He had 35,521 acres, and it was in production. And this is before the gold rush. So, I mean, it's not anything to be ashamed about. This is Negro excellence. This is the first U.S. diplomat of African descent in American history. And I don't understand why it's a difficult thing to tell the story, why it's a difficult for people to be proud of it. But he was born in St. Croix, and his people were indigenous. But the idea that today is National Native American Heritage Day, there's well over 250 indigenous tribes here in California. more diversity of Native Americans than the rest of the United States combined, simply because the flora and fauna of California provides that kind of diversity. So when people are 1,000, 2,000 people living together in microclimates, they have their own language, their own ways, and the food that they eat in each of these different places is different. I mean, even if it's the collard green that I love so much, if you go to collard green in the Bay Area, it's going to taste different than the collard green here in the Valley. It's going to taste different than the collard green grow up in the mountain because of the soil, because of the climate, because of the temperature, the growing season. There's all sorts of beauty in recognizing and being able to taste those differences. And here along the what we call Lake Natoma waterfront, after, well, I just say it like this, after raping the land for gold, over $250 million of gold just in this area was scraped by hand, by shovel, by big backhoe picks, by dredges. I'm talking about industrial height to mine gold. The dredges pulled over $250 million worth of gold, and the tailings that you see, and let's see, there's some back here. It's just raw river rock. And in this particular area, that grill smells good. I'll throw them links on there. I didn't have breakfast, and leftovers is at home, so I gotta eat something out here. But this is, as you see housing way up on the bluff, and this was cut by the river naturally. But what you see here, this amphitheater was called tailings, and you get these big river rocks devoid of all soil, and it just throws them off to the side in big giant mounds. And so the dredges went down 30 feet. So believe me, if you go down 35 feet, there's a lot of gold if you know where to look. A lot of gold if you know where to look. And that's what science is about. But the idea that this area here has been set aside for people of African descent for over 25 years to be able to showcase our culture. And for a lot of reasons, here we are in 2023, the best way forward is to do it in partnership, as Herschel calls it, by BIPOC, with another twist to it. But the idea is, if that's what it takes to tell our story, is we have to tell everybody's story. We don't have a problem with that. It is unfortunate that the place that to decide to do multiculturalism is a place that was Negro bar. Is very difficult to explain to people, articulate why in 1848 there was entire towns that people of African descent established, when the rest of the nation is enslaved. This is too egregious of a story to tell. So we'll tell the story with everybody, because it was a gold rush and everybody came to this place called Negro Bar, and everybody lived in Negro Hill. When the communities around burned to the ground, well, guess where they moved? They moved into Negro Hill. And today it's El Dorado Hills. This is some of the richest part of California because of the pristine bounty of the land. It would just be ridiculous not to honor the indigenous cultures that have survived, arguably far worse than people of African descent, because this was done on their homeland. We were treated bad and foul away from our homeland. So we could make that argument one way or the other, but why have an argument about who was treated the worst? Why not work together and say, let's preserve our history? So I'll stop there. And the blessing is that it's a month celebration, just like Black History Month started out as a day, went to a week, and now it's a whole month. There's still a little bit of month left to celebrate Native American Heritage Month, but the day when it started, we must give honor to how it began, and on the lands that we call indigenous lands here in California. We'd be less than human not to honor those that came before us that are originally from this land. I was born here, but this is where my parents were born here, and their parents were not born here in California. We migrated here by choice because there was greater opportunity in California for my parents. And thank God that the Native American community here has no problem with a Choctaw, Washita Indian sitting in the sweat lodge for several decades and singing the songs and being at one with the Native Americans. So I'll stop there. It's a blessing to be with y'all.
Well, thank you so very much. Herschel, I'm going to turn it back over to you. After I do just a bit of sharing, it's very easy to find. Google Negro Bar, and you'll find that it's also the name of a large gravel bar on the south side of the American River in California. The name comes from the African American gold miners who discovered gold there. So, Michael, absolutely correct.
Well, that's part of the story. So yes, but pre-gold rush, it was a Negro who owned the land, 35,521 acres, and his Mexican land grant said, "I will not disturb the Native Americans." That's the stipulation he put in there. So the idea that there was a town that sprung up above the gravel area where the gold was, which was the town of Negro Bar in 1848. We have the documents. And so from 1848 to 1855, there's thousands of people in the unincorporated town of Negro Bar. The Sacramento County Board of Supervisors, the chair of the County Board of Supervisors, has a hotel in the town of Negro Bar. So the source documentations, you have to go a little bit beyond Google. You have to go into the archives, because you have to remember 1857, Dred Scott case, slave or free, you have no rights. The white man is bound, black man has no rights, the white man is bound to respect. So a lot of the history has been removed. A lot of the source documentation is hard to find. And just last year, they changed the name from Negro Bar to Black Miners Bar because it's far more offensive to tell the authentic history of people of African descent in 1848 that were free and had whole towns than to say that we were in Mexico and the governor was Black, the diplomat for the United States was Black, the state of California is named after a Black woman, and we were in partnership with the indigenous people who were, dealing with disease and genocide, because everywhere their land, where they lived, that was where gold was, they were encouraged to leave. And if they didn't want to leave, they were shot and killed. And the state government paid for people to remove them. And if they didn't, they would kill them and take their scalp or their ears to Old Sacramento and get paid. And the federal government would reimburse the state officials for removing Indians. This is nothing new.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. I heard you say that you were going to put a pin in it and allow me that chance to speak. I walked through. So if you allow me to continue what I was sharing.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead.
Is that when you Google this information, what you'll find is what Michael said. In fact, as I said, the Negro Bar is the name of a large gravel bar on the south side of the American River in California. The name comes from the African American gold miners who discovered gold there. However, the story continues to discuss it in the early 20th century. United States Geological Survey moved the name of the bar to the north side of the river. The area was originally known as Main Bar. The name was initially changed to Nigger Bar. In the 1950s, President Harry Truman signed a number of federal laws and the name changed back to Negro Bar. However, Michael, when you click the next link, it takes more in-depth information. And if you'll allow me, I'd like to share that and then allow Herschel to make comments and then come back to you, Michael, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
So Negro Bar, as you can see, is Lake Natoma unit of the Folsom Lake SRA. And as Michael mentioned, it's part of the California State Parks. California State Park and Recreation Commission voted unanimously to rename Negro Bar day use area in the Folsom Lake State Recreation Area to the Black Miners Bar day use area on a temporary basis until a permanent name is chosen. Of course, this article was some time ago, but the Black Miners Bar day use area is a stretch along the American River just below Folsom Dam and across the river from downtown historic Folsom. The area has been used by different groups of people across thousands of years, beginning with the Native Americans, then Spanish immigrants, and then miners chasing prosperity during the gold rush in 1849. The area was known during the gold rush as a place where African Americans searched for gold. Newspapers and publications in the early 1850s referred to it as Negro Bar through the rest of the century. Steve Colton, supervisor of the Cultural Resources Program in the California Department of Parks and Recreation, told the commission the area where African Americans originally settled during the gold rush was on the south side of the American River, near downtown Folsom, and appeared on early maps of the area. In my conclusion, before I turn it over to Herschel, it does transition to the fact that in the early 20th century, the United States Geological Survey decided to move the name of the bar to the north side and initially called it Nigger Bar until the name changed back to Negro Bar in the 1950s when President Harry Truman signed a number of federal laws outlawing the use of that word on signage in federal recreation areas and parks. So that's the historic reason why we're dealing with this semantics. So Herschel Daniels, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah. So in the work that me and Michael are doing, we like to talk about history as history. Okay. And so that's why the work that we started in the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues in the 15th session on May 20th, 2016 is historic in that was the first time that Native Americans held a radio broadcast from the United Nations, Flora, the United Nations. And so under the special theme that year of Indigenous people, conflict, peace, and resolution, today is Resolution Day. And part of that Resolution Day is to talk about history. And as I mentioned earlier, Friends of the African Union, the World Conference of Mayors and Allies and Affiliates, on December 9th in California, will launch the BIPOCA Alliance for History. It's driven by Black folk in partnership with Indigenous people that started back in the United Nations on May 20, 2016, co-sponsored by a Native American-based group, Cato Assets Services Help Community Development, and New Future Foundation. Now, that work brought forward in 2023 then draws on the Biden-Harris administration's claim to fame in terms of addressing racial inequality. And so the history, so just so for California purposes, to understand that it is a Black folks driven Indigenous people, people of color, and allied white folk. Okay, BIPOC. We're not a BIPOC group. We're a BIPOC group. We're all of us who wants to be our allies for Black folk and Indigenous people. And in that, we're drawing on 400 years of history. And so in 1619, we'll start with the history of Negro Bar. Okay, we'll start with that history, and we'll bring 400 years forward to 2019, and we'll invite everybody to the table. Everybody, because we're not afraid of history, and we acknowledge that in the United States of America, many indigenous people, like African Americans, are the victims, okay, in the past. And our answer to Martin Luther King, where do we go from here, is that we must unite with each other and help create with allies a hashtag just economy. So we're about that, working with Michael. We set this up for people who are Native American or internationally called indigenous people. We set up a plan, and for funding, it has taken us these long years. And as a member of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, that since 2016 has now created $580 billion worth of Federal Reserve community benefit agreements. As we said at the annual meeting of NCRC before 1,200 members at that annual meeting in March, we're now taking leadership. Now we're on this day, that was for the Black community. For this day, working with the World Conference of Mayors Committee on indigenous peoples' issues. We look forward to working with Michael and his group in California, making this happen. And in the chat is all of the information that people can see on this. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Virtual. I would like to, before turning it over to you, Michael, I would like to make a comment. I'm from Macon, Georgia. The world-renowned Ocmulgee Mounds are there in Georgia. So I'm also proud of my indigenous heritage. But I do, Michael, want to also share with you the fact, the reality that in California, we're only a part of what used to be Mexico. And we're part of what used to be what's called Turtle Island, which included the entire North American continent. But so many of those have a basis in the Aztec heritage and also the Olmec heritage. So I really believe it's necessary for us, Herschel, to consider the BIPOC alliance, also include those of us who have Hispanic and Mexican descent.
And that's why we have people of color, Andrew. Okay. Okay. It's Black folk and indigenous people who started it in 2016, but
Yes.
we added in 2023 people of color. So we made it BIPOC, Black folk, indigenous, people of color, and allied white folk.
Well, thank you. But in that regard, you may have heard here in Los Angeles, we had quite a hoorah about a year or so ago, because our city council person was denigrating not only the people of African descent, but specifically those Awakans. So I do understand that people of color includes all those. I'm just suggesting that as we go forward with this conversation, we also have to take, I believe, the alliance of those people who are in the room with us and be more specific about that. But again, that's my personal thought. So Michael Harris, back to you for any closing thought. Thank you for today.
I'm mindful that we have to be custodians, full dominion of the earth. That's what my grandmama taught me right out of the King James Version of the Bible. And there's only so much land here. It's a 1 mile area that for my entire life it's been Negro Bar, and I know the history, but every time we say Negro Bar or talk about people of African descent, there's always a agreement that subject verb agreement doesn't matter when it comes to people of African descent. So I have no problem making Black Minded Bar multicultural, and I have no problem with including everybody, but we have to like put timelines of things and bring source documentation to the table, because whenever we start talking about Black folks, we get watered down and we obviously don't get anything. And so here in this state park, we have a small footprint where the African founding father owned 35,521 acres. And that equity for people of African descent is long gone.
Yes.
And we still won't recognize that as most people of African descent. But I'm certainly all for everybody being able to eat at the table. That's who we are as my family, and that's who we are as a community.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. I want to bring to everyone's attention to, we're fast approaching 2026. There is an effort called America250.org that invites us to tell our stories. So I'm inviting us to tell the story there, Michael. But part of the reason I was bringing up the fact that we do also have people in the room in California that are of Hispanic descent, etc. This is also part of their history, Michael. I just want to make sure that we do our due diligence to allow them to honor us and what we're doing and their own heritage in relationship to us.
No, I'm clear. I'm Herschel and Andrew. I'm certain of that is going to happen. And when I go to St. Patrick's Day, we don't talk about Black history. When I go to Cinco de Mayo, we don't talk about Black history. And so when we are at Negro Bar, it's difficult for me to hear a whole lot of conversations about others and we never get involved. And so here, when the powers that be decide to rename this park and then to bring the Native American tribe here, I'm big enough, I'm human enough to say we welcome you. But I don't want to, like, it's Native American Heritage Day, and it's a Black man leading the charge to honor them on this land.
Yeah.
It's not the Native American, my folks, they were like, Michael, we got our own thing and we just did it the other day. And this day we got a whole month now. That day is not important. I said, yes, it is. Because it's a national day, and the blood that flows in all of our veins. If you could prove that you're Native American, not just say you are, you could prove it. That's one thing. So yeah, I'm all for it. And we got time enough to do it all. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Appreciate you both.
All right, Herschel, I'm going to close out. Any closing thoughts? Now's that time.
Yeah. So December 9th, Michael, what we found out with the celebration in 2026, we're the keynote for starting for California. California is not a partner yet with the 250th celebration of the United States. Okay, so
you mean the state of California, our government?
The state of California.
Okay.
The state of California is not part of that celebration. And so, and again, on December 9th, we're starting to make it for that, for the BIPOCA, right? Black folk history, indigenous people history, people of color history, allied white folk history. We're inviting everybody to the table to say 400 years ago, what was the history of California? Bringing it forward, okay? And we'll cover all of that. Who was here then? Who was here in 1619? And when people ask, well, why did you choose 16? Is that a New York Times 16? No, it's American law. HR 1242, signed on January 8th after Congress, no Republican, no Democrat, no independent objected. And so President Trump signed it on January 8th, 2018. So nobody can say, well, we're playing Biden games, we're playing Obama games, we're playing Bush games, we're playing American law games. Okay, rule of law. All right, so let's get ready for December 9th to kick it off.
All right. Let me know. I'm ready. All right. Thank you all.
All right, thanks everyone. This is
Blessed day. And we'll close out and saying, all my relations. And if I had a rattle, I'd shake it. I'd shake it. Take care.
I host also John T. Moss, others among our family and friends that are represented here. Also, we give thanks to Lady Alicia Hamilton and her New World Network. Michael, we're live streaming this on Facebook. We're also streaming this on the New World Network. So we have all here to support our efforts.
All right.
Thanks so much, everyone.
All right.
Day.
Peace, blessings.
All right. Love to all.
Okay, I don't